Content warning. This video contains discussion about difficult subjects from the outset. Child sexual abuse, paedophilia, incest, drug use.
And you did psychedelics as well.
Oh, yeah. I also did psychedelics. That was the last thing we ended up doing because I was warned not to do psychedelics at my mental state until we were in a better mental state. And so what my fiance and I did was we ended up ordering truffles first online, which is like a derivative of mushrooms. And from what we learned is that your first trip's supposed to be a fun one, so you're not scared of it. And then the rest of the trips are like for therapy, and we've been only using psychedelics for therapy. And so first trip was fun. We were able to like block out any weird stuff, and then after that, that's when we hunkered down and really took turns taking the psychedelics in order to work their issues. And then for me, for the past couple of trips I've done with mushrooms and even with acid, I only worked on what's it called? I called them my mommy issues, but really there were woman issues due to my own mother, my grandmother, my tia, all the women in my life that I felt like either let me down in one way or made it, or my mother, she didn't let me down, but she did make my childhood a little bit more difficult growing up. And what personally worked for me was that I would take my God's dose or acid trip and I would sit in front of my paintings. I paint, and I will paint out my emotions. And then when you're in this and psychedelics, you take the psychedelics, it changes your perceptions. But it's if anybody's never done them before, basically what happens is that your thinking slows down. And then normally when you're sober, you're very quick, you're tactful, you can respond super fast. But with psychedelics, what happens is that it makes you more aware of, in that millisecond when you're thinking and you're talking back to someone or like talking with someone, you think of all the memories and all the thoughts in between the lines. And that's why your perception of time kind of goes like this. And it's also a great way to uncover, dark memories and you relive memories. So like when I've done one strong God's dose of mushrooms, which is around 5 to 6 grams. And that's around the territory that if you take a little too much, you'll actually, it's complete ego death and you don't know who you are. But I did it just the cusp of the ego death. And then finally went up, and I had to use painting as a way to ground me to know where I'm at. And so when I was painting stuff, like every little brush stroke was a memory. That's like every brush stroke was an entire memory. So it was like living entire things in my childhood. So I was like living my sexual abuse and then family. And then during that time, I had like a higher being, which I think was like my normal voice. But I that time to me, that was God. God was a woman who was very beautiful and like had black hair, dark skin. And she was in the back saying, "It's okay, Angel. It's okay. Let's work through this. It's okay to cry." And like for the trip lasted like 9 hours. So the first 5 hours, I was just sobbing while painting and sobbing and crying and rethinking. And then each between each memory, I was able to process it. So like each trip felt like I did like 5 to 10 years worth of therapy. And so that was like the first trip. And then the second trip I did acid, and acid is the longest. It's like a huge long trip. Like it gets to the point where like if you take enough, like everything starts turning into factorials and is very beautiful. That's why you see people on acid, they're just like staring at things because they're seeing the colors change and vibrate. And when you're painting, the colors just like do this, they shimmer and they change and they move. And it's like very beautiful. And then like it kind of looks like like you're looking through a frosted glass pane that something's moving underneath like that. And for me, when I was on acid, I did a huge painting that I called Mother's Love, which like all mothers. And again, I had to work through a lot of more, like even more stuff that I need to work with women in my life. And painting it out, it was very cathartic because again, this time I cried another like 6 to 7 hours. And then when I was done, I was still painting. And it was like Yeah, the point where when you're an acid, you get to a little scary part. You're like, oh, I guess this is how I'm going to see the world for the rest of my life because it just keeps going and going and going. And to the point where like my eyes got tired. I'm like, man, I wish I could sleep right now, but I can't because I'm still in my acid trip. Actually, I have the painting. Let me show you.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I know you can't hear me right now, or I mean, you can hear me.
No, we can hear you.
But this was the giant acid painting that I
Oh,
ended up
wow.
doing. Yeah. So like, this ended up supposed to be me when I was like a teen, and then she's like, I think it's supposed to be like the fabric of reality that I was supposed to be like trying to take reality and redo it, and then it's supposed to be like my inner child, supposed to be like more heavenly and more like outspoken and whatnot. And like all of this was funny because up here, like I know parts of the painting where up here I worked on mothers, my tia and my grandmother. So each like mushroom was like a memory that I had with them. And then down here I worked on fathers and then also generational abuse that happens within families. And this painting was basically what I used to figure out that this is when I started fully accepting and also forgiving everyone in my life that's ever like that's hurt me in some way. And I came to the conclusion that being a parent is really hard, and people, like especially like my mother too, this was like basically an ode to my mom, that people, when you're a mother, a tia, a grandmother, you're basically trying the best with what you have, even if the best isn't great. And unfortunately, like right now, like back then, I'm like, oh my, they never loved me. In their own way, they did love me. They did love me. It's just with their own untreated trauma and untreated horrific things that happened to themselves. They could only do so much to help and raise me. And I forgave. I basically got to the point where I'm like, I forgive you guys. Like, I understand. Like, I know you guys had choices, but I also understand you also had trauma. And then maybe your parents had trauma and my great-great-grandparents had trauma. And that I realized that it's up to me right now in this moment in time to try to break away from that cycle. Hopefully when my fiance and I start a family of our own, that I know my children will have their own traumas to deal with, but hopefully I'll be able to deal with enough where hopefully their trauma is, you know, high school crush not falling in love with them or something, you know, something normal, you know, or like a horrific breakup, you know, in college or something like that. That's like, that's the type of stuff I want them to, you know, like, I don't want them to be hurt, but like, it's the type of normal stuff with trauma that I would like them to go through, not like drugs and cartel stuff and, you know, sexual abuse. Like, no, like, I just want like a happy, you know, family that's like communicative and try not to have as many secrets that's like life changing. And I just, you know, come to a conclusion. I'm like, yeah, forgive them. Now I need to move on and try to make it better. You know, break the cycle.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed listening to Angel's story. If you'd like to support this channel, you can donate to our PayPal, which is on your screen now. The link is also in the description. We hope to see you back here soon.